Hello, and welcome to Red Alert. I'm your host, Adam Murray. In this episode, I want to talk about the far right. And the worst thing about wanting to talk about the far right is how much right-wing content that I've had to consume to prepare for this. A lot of it very unpleasant. Michael Brooks on his show recently referred to it as the most unmeditative part of the job. I have to say I completely agree. And I want to talk about Gemma O'Doherty. I don't really want to talk about Gemma O'Doherty, but I have to if I want to talk about the rise of the far right in Ireland. Gemma O'Doherty has become practically a household name over the last couple of years after she wanted to throw her hat in the ring for the presidential elections in Ireland. And she didn't secure enough nominations to take part in that election, but she did subsequently run in the European parliamentary elections that took place not long ago. And I think for a lot of people, she came onto the stage politically very suddenly, and it's taken a lot of people some time to actually get to know her politics, and the way that she carries those politics out. One bizarre, almost comical moment that stood out, I think, during her campaign to become a member of the European Parliament was when she took a live stream video in Dublin Airport. She started her very concerned live streaming talking about a multi-faith room that sits in Dublin Airport, and she lambasted the airport authority for the lack of a Christian cross or an altar in that multi-faith room. It apparently breaks her heart how un-Irish Dublin Airport has become, and she had this to say: "Dublin Airport is one of the most globalist places in the country, and that's obviously because it is an international location in terms of lots of people of different nationalities coming and going. But every time I come here, it feels less and less Irish." She went on to opine, and even the planes are no longer going to be green. Now, personally speaking, I'm not sure if the globalists held some sort of special meeting to decide that, but in any case, they can clearly exert enough pressure on Aer Lingus that they would change the colour of their airplanes.
Dublin Airport is one of the most globalist places in the country, and even the planes now are no longer going to be green.
The power of these globalists clearly knows no bounds. She goes on to say in her video, "So there you see it. Green is no longer our national colour. You see it less and less." If Gemma is so deeply concerned about the preservation and promotion of Irish culture, here are a few practical things that I would suggest she focus on instead of green airplanes. Promotion of the Irish language, promotion of Irish musicians, artists, dancers, songwriters, and other talents, of which we have many. Promotion of Irish sports and games. Anything other than this plastic patty nonsense that she's prattling on about. But if this airport thing really is going to upset her so much, Gemma, here are some soothing words. The signage in Dublin Airport is all in green, and it's in Irish. The shuttle buses are also green. If you go to the airport bar, you can get yourself a full Irish breakfast, and you can get a pint of Guinness to wash it all down with. And if you're really lucky, maybe they'll draw a little shamrock in it for you. I'm pretty sure, Gemma, that if you look in the gift shop, you'll find all the leprechauns and green things and four-leaf clovers that you need to keep you feeling Irish. But Gemma, if you ever feel like you need some sort of Irish cultural boost, can I suggest you go lie down in a Carol's gift shop until you've recovered your strength? Now, of course, I know, just as most people watching this will know, that it really has nothing to do with green airplanes or the erosion of Irish culture. No, when the far right talk about cultural erosion and globalism, we all know what they're really talking about. They're talking about them. They're talking about some sort of them. Foreigners, the non-Christians, the heathen atheists, the non-white invaders, the deviant perverts, them with a capital T. The other, the not us, the not how it used to be done, themins over there, who aren't going to be trusted and who are changing our sacred, hallowed way of life. And this is exemplified best in Gemma's Dublin Airport video, when she talks with indignance about that multi-faith room having a sign pointing to Mecca and a place for Muslims to carry out their ritualistic washing before prayer, she puts it, which I think is an interesting choice of language, would Gemma equally refer to how Christians ritualistically cross themselves or genuflect in church?
And I entered the multi-faith room. I might as well have stepped into a mosque in Mecca. No cross, and there was also a sign pointing to Mecca. I brought it up with staff who were extremely rude. I've come to expect that now, but not one cross in that room. Plenty of prayer mats, plenty of bending over backward for Islam. So that's the situation. Even the person checking me in here did not even speak English properly.
But I digress somewhat. And of course, the outrageous cherry on top of this globalist Muslim outrage, prayer mats, those sick sons of... Gemma says that she might as well have stepped into a mosque in Mecca, and this is an outrage. Such an outrage, in fact, that Gemma decided to bring it up with the airport staff, calling it an outrage to them and reminding them that this is a Christian country. And according to Gemma, the staff were quite rude, which she's come to expect. I can almost kind of imagine it. There's the staff going about their day, trying to do their jobs, and clearly whoever wrote their contracts didn't include that part of their job was to have a failed presidential candidate come up to them complaining about Muslim prayer mats in a multi-faith room. I imagine the staff were somewhat confused at first about what exactly Gemma was trying to say, or perhaps even confused like, who is this lady and why is she so angry about nothing? So the staff were not helpful, let's say, and I'm not saying... I'm not sure what exactly they could have done to appease Gemma O'Doherty. She said in her video, Ireland is bending over backwards to appease Islam by including Islamic prayer mats in a multi-faith room in an airport. But I guess she's right. We should ban Islamic items from multi-faith rooms. In fact, we don't want any of that Jewish stuff either. None of that Hindu crap either. And certainly none of that Buddhist stuff. Let's ban them all from the multi-faith room. So once we've gotten rid of all the multiple faiths from the multi-faith room, there should be just enough room left to put in a chapel, a nice multi-faith chapel. That would be much better, obviously. It's only fair since in a Christian country, there isn't even a Christian cross in the multi-faith room. Well, here's the funny twist in this story. The Dublin Airport Authority did actually respond to Gemma's outrage to point out that there is in fact a full Catholic church situated on the grounds of the airport. Our Lady Queen of Heaven is a Catholic church situated beside Terminal 1 in the airport grounds. But you could forgive Gemma O'Doherty for not knowing about it. It's a relatively new installation, only built in 1964. So there you go, folks. The multi-faith room in Dublin Airport has Muslim prayer mats. It's an absolute outrage. What about the Christians? All they get is their own freaking Catholic church beside Terminal 1. The Muslim hordes and their globalist masters have clearly driven Christian Ireland to the precipice of its very existence. Now, to be fair to Gemma, Islam is Ireland's third biggest religion. Did you know that? This may shock and terrify a lot of people, but I have to confirm it is actually the truth. There are 63,000 Muslims and 50 mosques or prayer rooms across the island of Ireland. Geez, those could almost sound like big numbers when taken completely outside of context and delivered in a prejudiced, incredulous tone, as I've just done. Of course, the reality is those numbers are tiny when contrasted with the 3.7 million members of the Catholic Church in Ireland, based out of 1,025 Catholic churches in towns and cities across the island, according to the Catholic Directory website. So, where is this destruction of Catholic Ireland or Christian Ireland that people like Gemma O'Doherty and others on the far right talk about? It's true that the number of subscribing Catholics has went down since the 2011 census. Personally, I think any level-headed analysis of that would put it down to A, younger people being less likely to be institutionally religious, regularly attending Mass, or identifying as religious in the census. And B, and hear me out on this one, the ever-growing wealth of evidence that the Catholic Church proactively covered up child sex abuse on a massive scale, as well as adult sex abuse by clergy members, as well as the breaking of the Tomb Mother and Baby Home scandal, the Magdalene laundry scandal about women basically being enslaved, and how fresh scandals are arising, shining more light on women who have basically had their babies stolen from them, and those babies were adopted off to Americans, which means that a lot of people living in America right now may well have been born to an Irish mother in Ireland and adopted off to America, and they're not even aware of it. If Catholicism in Ireland, as Gemma thinks of it, is in crisis, and you think it's obvious that it's in some sort of crisis in light of its major losses in the same-sex marriage referendum, the appeal of the Eighth Amendment referendum, giving women back some bodily autonomy, and their most recent referendum loss, when 82% of voters chose to relax the conditions for divorce. The political parties clearly in Ireland no longer feel the need to back the Catholic Church's interpretation of morality when it comes to these sorts of social issues, at least. Quite the opposite. And the people have proven themselves to be more progressive than perhaps many commentators would have given them credit for. So again, if I could offer some little advice to the Gemma O'Dohertys of Ireland out there, the Christian fundamentalists, the people trying to stir up some sort of anti-Muslim crusade to bolster their fragile egos, or perhaps whip up some sort of political movement around defense of Christian Ireland, Muslims and mosques are really not your problem, not by a long shot. Your problem is a church leadership that steadfastly refuses to modernize, fails to fully own up to its own abuse that it's inflicted on the people of Ireland past and present, and a church that has clearly fallen behind the population on social issues. If you want to try and rally Irish people around shamrocks, green plains, and good old time religion, you'll quickly find that no one's there to hear it, which is best exemplified by Gemma securing only 1.8% of the vote in that European election. In her airport live stream, Gemma O'Doherty said that the people of Ireland have had enough, that they're going to rise up and reclaim their country. Well, Gemma, look around you. Perhaps the people of Ireland have already started that process. It just wasn't Muslims that they had enough of. They'd had enough of men in frocks and silly hats, telling them who they could or couldn't love and marry, telling women what they can and can't do with their body and their reproductive health, telling people what they can, when they can and can't get divorced, trying to cover up abuse, and all the plethora of other lectures and stunts that we've seen from a church so obviously corrupt and disingenuous at the top. And I haven't even touched on the Protestant churches or the sectarianism in the north, but I will get to those topics in future episodes when we talk about the north of Ireland and the state of the peace process and the levels of sectarianism. But for now, I want to focus on the rise of the far right. And I think that when Gemma O'Doherty threw her hat into that ring for President of Ireland, a lot of people were intrigued by her. They had heard about her and her impressive as an investigative journalist, and I think there was actually some hope that she would make for a very good anti-corruption candidate. But as time goes on, she's instead become the most notorious figure of Ireland's far right, certainly its most well-known name. She spends a lot of her time lambasting the Muslim population in Ireland, as well as LGBT people. I think she's got something against vaccinations, perceived communists around every corner. Actual communists, not so much, strangely, but maybe this video will change that. The cultural Marxist trope that the far right likes to use is very much the home base of people on the far right, such as Gemma O'Doherty. And it's from that base that much of their bile flows. And so though I've just spent a good while criticizing her frankly absurd views, her lack of logical thinking, and her bizarre behavior and actions, I can't help myself. I'm going to talk about her some more. So at the end of May, Gemma O'Doherty, Ireland's most prominent far-right figure, decided to walk into a gentleman's shop in Longford, filming her encounter with the shopkeeper as she put on her sweetest, fakest, nice voice. She asked him some questions such as, "Where are you from?" Which, Gemma, where I'm from is a pretty rude question to just walk up to someone and ask them while filming.
Hello, how are you? Do you mind me filming your shop? Where are you from, sir? Iraq, okay.
Either she got permission from the shopkeeper before she went into the shop, or that shopkeeper had the patience of a saint. But in any case, she asked that question, and the man says that he's from Iraq. Gemma goes on to ask further questions. "And did you bring all your family here? Is most of your food in this shop imported? Is any of it from Ireland? Are you happy that there's only one mosque here? And have you learned any Irish or Irish history? She goes on to tell this gentleman that she feels like Longford isn't Irish anymore, and asks how does he feel about Irish people who feel that there are too many mosques. She also asks him if it's not true, to be a good Muslim, he has to consider Christians to be the infidel and to consider them to be enemies. Although the shopkeeper quite clearly objects to that last question, saying no, sadly his other responses are brief and aren't picked up on very well by whatever terrible recording device Gemma's running around Ireland using.
Hey, can I interview you?
Sorry?
Can I interview you?
Yes.
Have you brought all your family here?
My wife.
Okay. Yeah. So is most of your food imported?
Yes.
And do you have a mosque here in Longford?
Yes.
Is there just one mosque?
Yes.
And what do you think of Irish culture? Have you learnt much Irish? Have you learnt much about Irish history or
Yes.
poetry or politics?
Yes, but,
Do you think that the people here in the town who are foreign, because you're now the majority, we think that you non-nationals are now the majority in Longford town. So is it the case that non-nationals are integrating, do you think? Or are they staying within their own cultures? Are they embracing Irish culture and Irish ways and Irish traditions and Irish food and Irish, culture? Or are they staying within their own culture? Yeah, here in Longford. Because it feels very far, like it feels to me I'm Irish, but it doesn't feel Irish anymore, this town. How do you feel about that?
no.
Yes. So, how do you feel about the fact that some Irish people are concerned that there are too many mosques now, that we're predominantly a Catholic country, that Christianity and Islam don't really go together? It's not very compatible. We've different. What do you?
I think it's,
Yeah. And do you think Muslim women should wear burqas?
it's not very important for her.
You don't expect it.
Yes.
The Quran says
Yes.
we are the enemy. If you're
No.
infidel.
Anyway, nobody is enemy.
Oh well, that's but then the Quran. So the Quran is wrong, is it? Or peace? Yes. Yeah.
Anywhere, it should be peace there.
Yeah.
No enemy.
Get a new microphone. My ears beg you. In any case, I can answer that question about people feeling like there's too many mosques, and by inference, too many Muslims. Gemma, 50 mosques or Islamic centres in Ireland, 1,025 Catholic churches. That's 20.5 Catholic churches for every mosque or Islamic centre. There are 63,000 Muslims in Ireland, and there are 3.7 million Catholics. According to a sample from the 2016 Irish census, 78.8% of people in the Republic of Ireland are Catholic, 2.6% subscribe to the Church of Ireland, 1.3% are Orthodox Christian. So that gives Christianity in Ireland a total of 82.7% of the population. Islam, in comparison, has 1.3%. What invasion is there to talk about? That 1.3% of people in Ireland being Muslim is some sort of existential threat to Irishness or Christianity in Ireland? Are you joking? I haven't even got on to her insane ranting about the death of multiculturalism, her beliefs that Christians and Muslims simply can't coexist alongside each other in a nation, despite the wealth of evidence to the contrary. Her idea that white Irish people are about to become a minority in Ireland, and her specific use of the word genocide when talking about this very, very, very slight shift in Irish demographics. Not only are 1 in 10 Irish people no longer identify as religious and are confirmed as atheists, according to a 2010 Bishops' Conference survey. 10.1% of Irish Catholics themselves also don't actually believe in God, according to that very same survey. And that study found that Catholics who only go to Mass for specific events, or only go less often than most, or only go once a year, or practically never go, totals about 38% of Catholics. So if it's the demise of Catholic Ireland that you're so worried about, Gemma O'Doherty, one does have to wonder why you're spending so much of your time saying that Christians and Muslims can't live side by side, and Ireland is bending over backwards to appease the Muslims by including them in airport multi-faith rooms, and why you're actually walking up to random Muslims who are just going about their day, asking them if they understand why maybe some people don't feel comfortable that there are more mosques in Ireland than there used to be. Could it be because you're aware that there is an underlying prejudice out there against Muslims in a way that there isn't one against atheists or people who are Catholic, but only like special occasions Catholic, not like believing in God and going to mass all the time Catholic? I guess it would be harder to launch a political career against the latter. No, the anti-Muslim stuff has all the juicy additions of latent xenophobia, fear of difference, good old-fashioned othering of people who may dress or look or worship different. That kind of narrative is tried and true and used by alt-writers the world over, all around the globe. Does Gemma know that it's a globe? I mean, I get that she's into like anti-vaxxing and chemtrails and Bush did 9/11, but is she a flat earther too? I genuinely don't think I can assume that she's not. Well, Gemma, whatever sympathy people on the left might have had for you whenever you first announced your candidacy for the President of Ireland, and whatever sympathy people in the centre had for you for your journalistic work, for the good work you've genuinely done in the past, and that I'm big enough to acknowledge, well, that sympathy is gone. You might, Gemma, want to set your sights somewhat lower than President of Ireland. I would suggest perhaps you try to become a mod on 4chan or the co-host of Alex Jones's InfoWars show. Now, I know I don't speak for everyone in Ireland. Gemma O'Doherty has a dedicated following who seem to be intensely protective of her, becoming highly defensive at any perceived criticism. So if they see this video, I imagine the comment section is going to be an absolute delight. Gemma O'Doherty received 10,622 votes in the EU elections, and whilst that's only 1.8%, it's still 10,622 people who gave her their support, and that's a solid base to work from. And I know that I am precisely the kind of person that Gemma O'Doherty sees as a political enemy, and undoubtedly as some sort of Irish traitor. I'm a communist. I take a lot of my political inspiration from the economic and social analysis of people like Karl Marx and Friedrich Engels. I'm a member of a Marxist-Leninist party, for goodness sakes. I'm an LGBT rights activist and have been active in that community for a decade. I mean, I get that my views in Gemma's world are automatically invalidated by the fact that I am all those things, and I'll undoubtedly be written off by the most loyal of her tinfoil hat-wearing guards. But I say all of this for the benefit of people who have maybe only a vague picture of her in their heads. Maybe you've heard one or two of the odd things that she said, but hey, a lot of people seem to kind of sympathize with her. So maybe she's got something to say. She doesn't. She's on another planet, and I'll tell you precisely why. I watched a video over the weekend again and again so that I could make sure that I knew what the content was, which was painful, I have to say. But basically, she was decrying that workmen were working on construction of a Lidl supermarket on a Sunday, which, as we all know, is the Lord's Day and a day for quiet rest. In her video, she claims that the agents of communism in Ireland, representatives of Angela Merkel, who I'll remind viewers is the leader of the Christian Democrats in Germany, not exactly the most communistic party. Well, her communist Lidl agents are worshipping Mammon, apparently, by carrying out construction work on a Sunday and building a supermarket. And this is where Gemma O'Doherty really jumps the shark, even for far-right sort of standards. She goes on to criticize the Lidl supermarket's communist blocks, saying that communists hate things of beauty because, you see, when building things, they use concrete blocks, square blocks, rectangular blocks with sharp edges. So basically, most buildings on Earth, square or rectangular blocks with edges. God, where do us communists dare to get off with such esoteric architectural styles? But hey, I would invite Gemma to go visit the former Soviet Union and have a look at the Moscow metro, among many other beautiful buildings. And it's true, in the former Soviet Union, brutalism was something of a popular style in the likes of the former USSR, but maybe that's because that they were trying to build enough houses to fully eradicate homelessness and ensure that everybody in their society had a home, something that Ireland has clearly not signed up to. And maybe it had to do with the design being kept simple and using cheap but long-lasting materials. I would ask everyone watching this, if you had a choice between homelessness and a plain, boring grey building to live in, which would you choose? I really don't understand where Gemma O'Doherty is coming from here. I can't tell if she's making she thinks she's making some sort of salient point, or if she is actually just in another world than the rest of us. I mean, is she advocating that all work be legally banned on a Sunday? Is that the Ireland that she wants to see? But architecture nitpicking aside, if you actually look at the video footage of that video, the supermarket is clearly made of glass. It looks like every other modern building, huge glass front windows. Where are these communist blocks that she promised me? Where's the razor wire? Where's the East German soldiers patrolling the perimeter with AK-47s and guard dogs that I was promised? It looks like a regular supermarket. You have no idea how frustrating it is to research her videos when she clearly isn't tethered to reality. But she goes on to say that the goal they have, they being the communists of the German Christian Democratic Union, I suppose, which Angela Merkel leads, the goal they have is to convince people that Sunday is no longer a special day for rest. It's just another day. Unthinkable. And they will then, at some point down the line, force us all to treat Friday as the new day of rest. Now, I have to admit, I had to pause at this point and look up why she had chosen Friday. And shock and horror, it turns out that Friday is recognized as something of a day of rest in the Islamic faith. So, did you follow all of that, friends and comrades? Don't worry if you didn't. But basically, the story there is that the Christian Democrats of Germany, who are a communist party led by Angela Merkel, a renowned communist, are using the supermarket chain Lidl to make us ignore the Christian Sabbath so that they can then force us all to observe the Islamic Day of Rest.
Shopping in Lidl, a multicultural place for young and old.
She then, as if that's not enough, she then segues into a barely lucid monologue about the demons who run the country, always talking about their sexuality, telling kids to be proud of their sexuality. And then she says that instead of telling kids that they should be proud of their sexuality, they should instead be telling them. And by the way, I don't know who they even is at this point. I have no idea. But they should be telling kids to go out and find a cure for cancer. Hey kids, stop talking about how you're proud to be LGBT and you won't be made to feel ashamed because of who you are. Just go out and find a cure for cancer already, you selfish demons. I mean, of course, opening up the conversation about cancer, Gemma can't help herself and goes on to point out that actually many cures for cancer have already been found. It's just that big pharma are keeping them from us, except, I guess, for all the various improvements to cancer treatment that have been made over the years and currently deployed by health services around the world. For example, communistic Cuba are really pioneering gene therapy for cancer. So I guess big pharma is very selective about which cancer cures they hide and which ones they release. And Gemma, you get that there isn't just one cure for cancer, right? That cancer is a complex medical condition with different types in different parts of the body coming about in different ways, and there are different ways to detect and combat it. But look, here's the crux. Gemma O'Doherty, the woman who was made from one of Alex Jones's spare ribs, it was probably a lot funnier when I wrote it down, is a woman who sees conspiracy at literally every turn. Just take this tweet in which she alleges the globalists, and again, I still would love to know who exactly she means by the globalists, in league with the Irish mainstream media, are trying to push homosexuality and abortions onto the people of Ireland in order to reduce the population? Are we really supposed to believe that a shadowy cabal of globalists have instructed the Irish Times to try and turn people gay and convince them to get abortions? It's beyond absurd. And it would be funny if she didn't have 10,000 people supporting her in Ireland. There's a brand of conspiracism that has been present in America for a very long time, fueled by shock jock style independent radio stations and to something of a degree by mainstream right-wing media, and subsequently on social media and YouTube channels where it's really blossomed and come into its own. They throw up boogeymen and shadows and scaremonger absolutely everywhere in so many different ways. Alex Jones is undoubtedly the godfather of this style of conspiracism.
I don't like them putting chemicals in the water that turn the friggin' frogs gay. Do you understand that? Serious crap.
And the solution, of course, is always either to vote for them or buy something from them. That's always the way to get around it. Whether it's a religious channel, a religious organization telling you to buy gold coins so that God will bless Donald Trump, or it's some creepy new cult telling you to join up and pay them money to rid you of your alien ghosts. I feel like the presence of this kind of right-wing political uber conspiracism on the stage of Irish politics in such a prominent way is a very new development. I'm not going to spend too much more time on this, folks. I think, after all, it pretty much speaks for itself. Gemma O'Doherty, the leading light of Ireland's far right, the darling of the Islamophobes and the opponents of LGBT rights, the opponents of progressive social change. I mean, she really is Ireland's arch-reactionary at this point. She's the conspiracist in chief. She's not on the same planet as the rest of us, folks. She's rapid firing out crazy in the hopes that people will latch on to one or more of her many myths and lies. And I think sometimes people can't see the forest for all the trees when it comes to this style of rapid fire off the wall right-wing rhetoric. It's the same old fascism, folks, just with a weird technicolor coat of paint for the internet age. And even Eoin, my producer, who's off camera, when I was showing him some of the examples I was going to use to highlight Gemma O'Doherty's deranged politics of conspiracy and prejudice, he was kind of saying, do we really need to do a piece about her? This is all a bit crazy. But I have to say, I really do feel like I had to do this segment early on because Gemma is she's like the most cartoonish version of what she does, right? She's like the way that Alex Jones is the most cartoonish version of what he does in the USA. But these people are names that younger people will recognize. Gemma O'Doherty had appealed to a lot of people in the beginning. And even though that's dropped dramatically, she still continues to appeal to a dedicated core of thousands. And it's our duty as leftists to keep calling this stuff out so that other people hear the critiques about her before they get sucked up and stuck into the web of conspiracies that she's weaving. And okay, she's too much for most people, but if only 5% of the conspiracy she throws around about the death of Catholic Ireland or the replacement of white people as a majority of the invading hordes of Muslims come to change our country, well, if only a tiny fraction of that really starts to stick in the heads of her viewers and supporters, that's bad for all of us as a society. Muslims aren't your enemy. The government is not trying to control your mind with chemtrails or fluoride in your water. Ireland is not overpopulated. Christianity is not going to be replaced with Islam. White people aren't about to become a minority in Ireland. The only agenda that LGBT will have is equality and fair treatment so we can live our lives as equals in relative peace. There is no shadowy cabal of globalists. If you want to find out who runs the world, check the Forbes 100 rich list. Okay, they're all there. And all this spraying of conspiracies and provably false theories and narratives, all that really is doing is distracting you from the real problem in our society. And that problem is the capitalist socioeconomic order that we live under. The problem is elitism and the class divide. These are issues that we should be talking about. Corporatism and corporations hold so much power internationally that they can get away with paying €0 tax on billions of profits. And the problem of the resurgence of the far right in its various guises, and make no mistake, Gemma O'Doherty, the Alex Joneses, these sorts of people, they are part of that resurgence. That is a looming threat to everyone, be they a minority or not. In times like this, it's really dangerous to write anybody off. So we have to fact check these people. We have to call them out. We have to be where they are on YouTube, on social media. Whenever they try and sell a narrative, we have to hold them to a higher standard. We have to hold them to account.